Yes. Anyone?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, cool. Well, all
Oh,
right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Phillip Karaya. Today we're going to be talking about understanding personal credit. Definitely want to make this interactive, so I'm going to have questions, and I want you guys to respond. We can make this conversational style. If you have questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask. I don't want you to feel like I don't like talking at people. I like interacting. So let's make this as interactive as we can while social distancing through our computers. So without further ado, let's talk about some credit. So why does any of this matter, right? So someone tell me why they think personal credit is important. Or tell me what personal credit is. I'll take either as an answer. Let's see. I will call on people randomly, and I also can unmute people from the host side. Oh, she said I can't unmute. Let's see. View all attendees. Will it not let me? The refresh link. Okay. All right. Let's see. What'd you say in the chat? Try refreshing the check-in, and if it's not working, oh, okay. I tried refreshing, and it still won't let me unmute her. No bueno. Okay, well, type in the chat.
yeah,
Type.
disregard, Philip. We don't want the tracker to mess up any of your amazing presentations. So don't worry about that, guys. We'll fix that on the back end. I just appreciate you letting us know. Phil, I don't want to take up any more of the time. You go ahead and share all the amazing information you have.
Okay, I got it. So personal credit is important just because. Oh, okay, someone actually typed in there. Okay, well, I'll read out your answer. It's important for everything. Okay, I'll take that. So, personal credit is definitely important because it depicts a lot of like what we do in life. Like even as you all continue, I assume a lot of you are finishing up college, getting ready to go. Even as employment, purchases, you deal with like interest rates. When it comes to purchasing a home, a difference of 2 or 3% on your interest rate for your mortgage can be thousands and thousands of dollars. The same thing if you're doing like a car loan. There are certain jobs that will look at your credit score and deny you or approve you based on it because personal credit is really nothing more than how good you are at like managing money. But I'm not gonna get bogged down. So our goal for like all of this is just to leave with more information than we had at the beginning. And I definitely want you guys to ask your questions as they come, since I guess we can't do the other way, but I'll definitely be taking a hop in there like towards the end to look at whatever questions we have and go through some stuff. So possibilities of good credit usage, right? So you can get the crazy cards that have like the really high credit limits and stuff. You can get the cards that don't necessarily have preset spending limits. You can get a lot of sky miles, and you can do you get a lot of like traveling perks. Personally, like that's what I like to do with my time. And so when I have some free time outside of a million other things, I love traveling. So I got cards that allowed me to get free points for the money that I have to spend anyways, whether it's on business stuff or personal stuff, and translate it over to Sky Miles or Hilton points or whatever it may be, and it makes it a lot simpler. My methodology for how you should use credit cards is that you should use it as an extension of your debit account, not as extra money. So if you have $1,000 in credit and you have $1,000 in the bank, you don't have $2,000. You have $1,000. And your goal should be, say your bills for the month are $500. Bills, not luxuries, not going out to eat extra, anything else, $500 flat. If you spend the $500 on your card and then on your debit card, like you technically don't really get anything extra out of it, which is okay. But if you spend it on a credit card and say you have like Sky Miles or whatever, you get Sky Miles for that. And then if you pay it off in full before the statement balance closes, you never deal with interest and you stayed within your means of how you should have been spending money anyways. The issue, and even the issue that I had when I first got into credit, and I'll dive into that story in a second, was getting started and then not understanding it's not excess money. This is money that you're borrowing from other people that you have to pay for borrowing that money. And so I like being able to utilize the money, but when I pay it off in full every month, I never have to deal with the interest. And I get a lot of really cool perks just travel wise. And so when it comes to like certain cards that you get towards the end, like your Like if you get a platinum American Express, you get like a gold American Express. Those are called charge cards. So with charge cards, you don't necessarily have spending limits, but the thing is, whatever you spend every month, you have to pay in full every month. So even if you spend $30,000, unlike regular cards where you can do a minimum payment, et cetera, you have to pay off that entire thing in full. And so just some different ways that we can do it. So what actually, is a good credit score, right? People look to, anything really like 700, above is what they'll look to, is like really being really good. If you are looking to get into like a mortgage or something else, then really it's about 750 or 760 and above. You'll get pretty much the best rate possible, no matter like what you're doing. People want to get to 800 just to say they have 800, but if you have a 760 FICO score and above, you can definitely still get whatever you need at the best interest rate possible, like etc. And so oftentimes when you're starting off, you'll have no credit, and people always wonder, is no credit any better than bad credit? And both of them aren't good when you can easily like go one way or the other and just have good credit. And so the one thing that I'll stress more than anything else is to never miss a payment on anything. Like I get it, like if you have student loans, they are technically in deferment until you graduate, but 6 months after you finish and Sally Mae comes knocking, looking to get that money, whether you need to look into doing like an income-based repayment, or you just go ahead and start outrightingly planning, like as you're budgeting now, for what your payments are going to be on your student loans if you do have that. Student loans aren't going to crush you as much as using too much utilization on your credit cards. And when we go through like the different things that impact credit, we'll talk about that. All right. So the difference in interest rates over like a 30 or a $200,000 home loan. And so this one just showing like how much your payment will be like per month, like if you have a 3.5% interest rate versus like a 4.5% rate. And it's about $100 difference, like a little bit less than $100. But the thing is, when it comes to these interest rates, we sometimes have had points in life where we deal with what's called subprime lending. And so subprime lending, and they do this a lot with credit cards as well, where they'll extend credit and decent credit lines to people that they know will mismanage it. And then they'll go on to max out the different cards, and then they'll be able to charge them a lot higher of an interest rate. Or the same thing if like you were looking to buy a house and say you put 20% down, so you're putting down that 40,000, but then you have like a 10% interest rate, like you'll be crushed in interest. And when it comes to mortgage loans, you always pay interest up front, and then principal comes kind of on the back end. And then as you're getting towards the end of your loan, you end up paying a lot more towards principal and very little towards interest, because they already got paid all their interest up front. So if you can avoid paying other people, interest to borrow money, the better. And so same thing, even if you want to go after home loans, there are a lot of programs that they have in Atlanta, like whether you're looking at stuff like Georgia Dreams, NACA has a program, Invest Atlanta has different programs, and all of them do require that you normally have at least a minimum FICO score of 680. And so that could be you getting grant money that you don't have to pay back on your house just by having a good credit score. Even if you have the cash in the bank, unless you're going to be buying everything completely in cash, which is normally unlikely for people looking to purchase a home or, a new car, just depending on what kind of car you're buying. It's a lot better to be able to qualify for the best interest rate possible. And so what impacts our credit? Like I was saying, the most important thing is payment history, like 35%, like missing one or two payments, and say you have a very thin credit file. So if you have anything less than 97%, it's looked to as terrible, really like less than 100%. Ideally, you never want to miss a payment. But one of the other cool things is you can actually get that reversed if you're like a one-time offender. You can normally get around that by sending it's called a goodwill letter. You would send that to the creditors, and then they have the ability to reverse that late payment off of there, because that is the number one thing. I mean, you have to think about it. Even if you're borrowing money from someone, I was like, oh, like, hey, Miss Erica, like I'd look to borrow, $1,000. And she's like, you know what, sure, here's $1,000. And then I don't pay her back. And then I'm like, hey, Pray, like, can I borrow $1,000? She's like, let me ask Miss Erica, because I heard you borrowed money from her. She goes to talk to Miss Erica, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, nah, he never paid me back, or he paid me back 90 days late every time he was supposed to make a payment. Then they're like, like I probably don't want to lend that person money. And as you think about it from the creditor standpoint, for them, they're giving you money to borrow, but they're looking to make money off of you for interest. So they're trying to only lend out money to people that they can conceptually assume will be able to pay them back plus the extra interest. So game the system, utilize them for the points, but don't pay them any interest. Like you can utilize the cards and utilize them the right way, paying off everything in full every single month puts you in a very good habit to always be in the right position. I get it. Life happens. Say, COVID happened. Like a lot of people are in very different like financial situations right now. And so let's say that you got injured and you had to go to Grady. They sent you a bill and it was like $1,500, and you're like, all right, well, they said you can't get whatever medication you need unless you paid it, and you're like, all right, I don't have it, but I'm going to charge it on my credit card. I get it. Stuff like that does happen, but then at that point, you should at least be making your minimum payment, and you should be aggressively planning out how to pay off the rest of that chunk, but not in saying like, oh, you know what? My friends are going on vacation in Mexico, so let's charge, $4,000 to the card, and then we'll figure out how to pay it later. Like, no, like that's not necessarily like that's a luxury. We get it. Life does happen. But the thing you never want to do is miss a payment. Outside of that, your FICO score is going to be looking at the amount that you owe. So that's going to be whether it's credit cards, being revolving credit, whether you have installment loans, which could be like student loans, whether you have, a car loan, whether you have a mortgage, et cetera. So they're looking at the total amount, that you have. 10% goes towards new credit. So this is when you get hard inquiries. The difference between a hard inquiry and a soft inquiry is that a hard inquiry will go on your report and it'll be there for about 2 years. It'll impact your score for 6 to 12 months, depending on the model that you're looking at. But if you see someone that's consistently going to ask for money, then you probably take that as a sign of like, we probably don't want to give them money because they're probably trying to extend or take all this money and then like go and spend it or something. So they like to see a lot of banks have what's called like a 524 rule. And so the 524 rule, it means that if you have 5 new accounts in the past 24 months, they'll deny you. Even if you have an 800 score, they'll still deny you for getting whatever new line of credit as far as personal. Business sometimes doesn't necessarily look at 524, but for personal accounts, they definitely look at 524. Next would be 15% towards the length of credit history. And so this is just how long your average age of credit normally is. And so the sooner you start, the better, but it's nothing wrong with getting started today. I mean, the best time to start was yesterday. Second best time would be today. And so the last 10% will be like your credit mix. So they want to see a different type of credit that you have, whether it's revolving credit, whether it's installment credit, mortgages, etc. So yeah. So inside, like Credit Karma is something that a lot of people use. So there's a Vantage score and then there's a FICO score, but this is like what a Vantage score models off of. And so high impact will be like your payment history. Like I was saying, that is going to be the heaviest thing more than anything else. Next would be your credit card use, because it's looking at, they want to see you're using 30% or less of whatever you have. I mean, ideally, I think it should be 0, but from a creditor standpoint, they look to see that you're spending 30% or less of all credit you have. And you have to be mindful of like, this is different depending on like how much credit you have. So for a lot of people, they'll probably have maybe $5,000 worth of credit, right? And so for them, using 30% of their credit would be using $1,500. If they're using $1,500 or less, they're still looked to as a good creditor, right? Personally, I probably have I just crossed maybe like 200 and let's sum it down and say 200,000, right? So I have a little more than $200,000 in credit. So that means that I could technically use $60,000 and I would still be looked to as a good creditor because my credit usage is still 30% or less. And so utilization is often going to be very different based on just how much available credit you actually have. And one of the ways that people try to mitigate this risk or make it easy for them is by getting higher credit limits, but then still making sure, I mean, this is in the idea. I want the idea to be that you always use whatever you spend, you pay off in full. But say you're doing business or something else and you're like, all right, well, look, I might need to do this or I'm going to help myself for this. You should be like, all right, the most I'm ever going to utilize is going to be 30%. And I'm making sure that I'm aggressively making a plan on how to pay it off. But yeah, derogatory marks. So this is going to be any collections. You can have like a phone bill or something that you don't pay. I had a client who was looking to get a house and they switched from like T-Mobile to AT&T, but I don't know what was going on with T-Mobile, but they were like, I didn't like the way they did customer service, da, 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 da. They didn't pay their last bill. So they put a derogatory mark on there in collections. And so that brought down their score to, I think it was like 650 or 670. But the thing is, they were looking to get a mortgage. So I was like, well, one, pay the bill that you owe, the $150, and then we can go ahead and dispute it to the different credit bureaus and get it taken off. So they were able to get it taken off. I think we got it within like a month because of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, every 30 days they have to cycle in whatever is true. And so after sending in our dispute to the 3 bureaus, they were able to take that off her credit file. She went back up to like, it was like 730, 740. She was able to get a really good, she got like 2% interest rate on her house, and she was able to close. And so same thing with like some of those programs that we were talking about earlier. You want to make sure that you're in a position where you have the credit that you need to get whatever programs you want. Next, medium impact will be, your credit age. And so that's something that naturally will just go up. A way that you can kind of get around this is by utilizing what's called credit card piggybacking. And so with that, say, your parents, ideally, if you're going to be added on someone's credit report, you want it to be a card that is old in age, that is high end limit, and that has zero utilization. You definitely do not want to be on a card that people are utilizing as like a daily driver, or that they're leaving really high balances on, because that will also impact your utilization. And so with that, say I only have, and it technically could work for people outside of, family and friends and spouses, but it's free. Normally your family members are willing to help you for free. Other people will charge you a decent amount of money just to be added onto the card, right? So say I have one credit card. I just opened my first credit card. I have $500 in it, right? So I have $500. I have zero utilization because I'm paying it off in full every month, so nothing ever post. My credit age is going to be literally like zero because I just opened up this card. I have one account. So what I could do is like, like, hey, Miss Erica, you know what? I'm looking to do this. And let's just say Miss Erica, she is like my mom. So I'm using her as my mom in this example. I'm looking to go ahead and get a mortgage like sometime soon. I got my first real job. I got good income, but I don't feel like my personal credit score is strong enough. Would you mind adding me as an authorized user on one of your cards? So she's like, well, I'm going to give you a card so you can go and spend money. It's like, oh, no, like, well, add me on the card. You can keep it, cut it up. I don't want anything to do spending on it. I just want the positive perks that come from being added onto that credit file. And so when she adds me, it would literally maybe take a month or two to post. But then after that, let's say it was a card that had 10 years in age, had $10,000 in limit. Now my credit profile would show that I have $10,500 as far as available credit. I would now have two accounts instead of one. And my age, instead of being zero, would be 5 years, because it would be the average of the 10-year card and the no age card. And so that's a really great way that a lot of people help, their kids, get forward earlier and just help teach them some responsibility on, hey, like, I'm doing this to help you, not to help you spend money, and you're not getting my card to spend money, just to help your credit profile. Total number of accounts, low impact. But the thing is, they want to see you're able to manage more money rather than not. I mean, do you trust someone that's able to manage $500, or do you trust a person that's able to manage $500,000? Who would you trust more with $2,000? Probably the person that was able to manage a lot more money, like perfectly. And then, as we were talking about, like hard inquiries. So this is something that will impact your score, like in the beginning. But even if you're, say, you're going to shop around for a car, for a mortgage or something, you normally have about a 14 to 30 day window where they don't pull your score like any more than that. But if you're looking to do like a car or something, my advice for people to do is to go ahead and qualify through whatever bank that you have. So you don't go to the dealership, but then the dealership is just going to send out your profile to like 7 different people, and you'll get like 7 inquiries when you could have just went straight to Bank of America, to Wells Fargo, to Navy Federal, already gotten the check for the loan, and then went straight to the dealership and walked out with your car. So yeah, sweet. So common credit types, we talked about installment loans. So you have car loans, and you have mortgages you can get. Then you have revolving credit cards, and then you have open credit, like charge cards. So revolving credit cards mean you have a set limit, and say it's $1,000. You can spend up to the whole 1,000. Even if you max it out, you have the ability to pay a minimum payment. You should be paying it off in full, but you have the ability to pay a minimum payment. Or when you have charge cards, you get very gray areas as far as spending limits, just depending on your income and what you do. But the thing is, you have to pay it off in full every single month. And so it can work out depending on where you are. And it takes a lot of diligence to utilize charge cards, because you really understand that, hey, whatever I charge, like, I have to be sure that I'm paying off in full. So 5 C's of credit. So they're going to be looking at, capacity, conditions, collateral, capital, and character. So like we were talking about, character, general reputation, making sure you don't have derogatory marks. You're not used to going and taking out bills and then never paying them. Capital, that you have income and other sources of money. Why am I going to give you a $5,000 credit limit when you make $2,000 a year? Makes no sense. Collateral, depending on what kind of loans you're looking to get, make sure you have assets that can guarantee whatever they're doing, because they do that often, like with business stuff. They'll look and see what securities you have, whether you have like stocks, options, etc., or whether you have like a home or something that you're willing to use up for collateral, like as you take that lump sum loan. The conditions you're trying to secure, as far as like a car, looking to whether you're doing a 3-year loan, or you're doing a 5-year loan, or a 7-year loan, which might be a little long and your interest rate would be pretty bad, but the conditions of what necessarily would matter. And then like your capacity. So what's your cash flow looking like? What's your debt to income ratio? If you're bringing in $1,000 a month, what mandatory expenses, do you have that are coming in, so they know that there's still enough room for us to get paid, normally with a little bit of interest on top of it. So some little tips and tricks: pay down your installment loans, as fast as possible. As we were talking about, if you have student loans, my whole thing is like, the second you owe nobody else any money, like any money you bring in is just wealth. So why not focus on, paying down everything you have, like, as soon as possible. I deal with a lot of clientele at all different levels, and it's funny, a lot of physicians and PhDs that I've worked with have a very different attitude towards student loans, where it's just like they can be 150, 300K, and they're still like, I'm not paying my student loans. I'm just going to do like minimum payments. And some of them do have subsidy programs where if they work for the hospital system or whatever for a certain amount of time, they'll pay off, whatever the remaining balance on their student loans is. But I think it's better just to make a plan for it, knock it out, get it out the way as your income jumps. As you guys continue to like get older and get your new jobs and continue going up, you can live off of what you were living off before, which you should be able to easily do. Take that extra money, pay down whatever debt, whatever bad debt you have. You're gonna take on, quote unquote good debt. I don't know, getting an investment property, or buying your first home, and then renting out a couple rooms, so you got cash flow and your mortgage is like super little. There's a bunch of different stuff you can do. Optimizing your credit card utilization, so making sure you're always at 30% or less. Ideally, I like zero, but 30% or less, completely get it. Increasing your credit limits so that anytime that you do actually have to have a charge and leave it on there, that it doesn't push you past that 10 to 30% limit mark. Consult with the company to remove derogatory marks. Honestly, consult YouTube University. Everything you could possibly want is on there. If you're looking to do a dispute, or let's say, since I can't actually talk to you guys, let's say someone's like, oh, like, I have a derogatory mark on there for, the same thing, T-Mobile bill or AT&T bill, whatever. One, call the creditor, because they've normally sold your debt to someone else. Call them, settle whatever the debt is. Make sure you have receipts of whatever you've paid. After that, you can either call, send in a letter by certified mail, or you can do it online to the three bureaus of TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And normally it'll be removed within like a month or two. And so definitely don't feel like you're stuck just because you have something negative on your report. Work to get it off. Like, it's pretty easy to scale and manipulate credit to get whatever you need. And utilize credit card piggybacking. We talked about that, like being able to be added on some of those other older accounts that can bring some extra positivity to your own profile, and your profile doesn't get shared with them. It's just that card that they added you on. That's how that works. So some key takeaways: making sure that you're paying your bills on time. I'm not going to stress that. Like, I cannot stress that enough. Like, pay your bills on time. Like, always pay them. Keep low balances and no balances on all of your credit cards. Make sure you're utilizing, your points, whatever rewards you get, whether it's cash back, whether it's Sky Miles, etc. But making sure that you're only spending what you can pay off in full every month, not utilizing it as, like, a credit card should not be your emergency fund. Your emergency fund should be cash, somewhere 3 to 6 months, whatever you need. But a credit card should not serve as your get out of jail free card. Yeah. Monitor your credit report to ensure that there aren't any mistakes. You get to go to annualcreditreport.com. You get a free report from each of the three bureaus. In Georgia, I just found out, I was doing a credit class a couple of days ago, and there were some people from Ohio, and apparently they don't get it for free there. But if you're in Georgia and you're tuning in from Georgia, annualcreditreport.com, you get 3 free reports for, well, 1 free report from the 3 bureaus once a year. And so that's pretty awesome. Avoid too many credit inquiries in a short period of time, and unnecessary annual fees. I don't think you should pay annual fees on cards unless whatever you're getting outweighs whatever you're paying. For the most part, I have about 20 credit cards, and so there's only 3 of them that I have annual fees with, and I have 2 of them in my wallet because I utilize them relatively often. And that is, one of them is the Delta Sky Miles card, and the other one is the American Express Platinum card, right? And so the way that I do my cost benefit analysis of whether it makes sense, with the Sky Miles card, it is $195 a year. I think it might have just gone up, but it was $195 a year, and I think I still have that rate locked in. I get free check bags with Delta, which is $60 round trip. So for me, if I'm doing 3 Delta flights within a year, it's about $180 that I save. On top of that, I get a companion pass that I get to use once a year. So the companion pass, if I was like, hey, you know what, Miss Erica, I love this. Let's go to California, like today, let's go to California, and we fly Delta, right? So last minute tickets can be pretty expensive. And so let's just say it's $700, right? So my ticket would be $700, but with my companion pass, I'm allowed to get one other ticket for no more than $75. So that definitely comes in handy when planning out trips, with friends, and you just get multiple friends that have the same card, so y'all get to do extra trips super cheap, and then just reduce whatever you're paying for that. And then with the platinum card, that one is a charge card. The first one's a revolving one. The other one's a charge card. Annual fee is about $600 a year, and the perks that come with that is like you get $200 as far as airline credit, you get $200 for Uber, you get $100 for Saks Fifth. You have access to like 1,200 lounges for the airports, like all throughout the world and stuff, which is super great because you pay about $30 just to eat if you stop in the airport, but you can go get they have food. If you drink, they have liquor and stuff. Like all that stuff is completely complimentary. That's really nice. You get gold status at pretty much every hotel. You get gold status at every like car rental place, and that's just some of the perks. And so these things, like if you actually travel and utilize it becomes worthwhile and it makes sense. But it's just about making sure you're getting stuff that makes sense for whatever your situation is. Uh, and so after that, protecting your finances, like keeping records in order to make sure that you don't have to worry about like fraud or anything else. Not carrying unnecessary cards around. This is my like Rolodex of a whole bunch of different cards that I have, and just like business accounts and stuff. And I just keep it locked away in a safe. And I normally keep everything like locked, including my credit profiles, which you can do completely for free. If you type in TransUnion freeze, Experian freeze, or Equifax freeze into Google, it'll prompt you to create an account and do everything. It's completely free. You can set a freeze on your account so that you never have to worry if someone does get into like, your social security information and has whatever information, it would be impossible for them to open up a new account or to go open up a bank account because you're the only person that can unlock it. And so it's just a good, back pocket thing. Credit cards for beginners. So we have Discover It Student. That's a really, really great one. And then any secured credit card, if you're not able to start with like a Discover It Student card or like get like a Macy's card or something small, then a secured credit card would be where you would start. With those ones, you have to give 125% of whatever you're looking for as far as a limit. So if I wanted a $500 limit, and this is what I did when I got my first secured credit card with Georgia United Credit Union, I went ahead and I had to give them $625 because it's the 500 plus the 25% interest. So, 25% of 500 is 125. And then, so I gave them the 625. They gave me the card with a $500 limit. I didn't know this. If I would have known what I know now, I would have kept the card, because what I did is I kept it. My credit score went up. I applied for other cards, and then I closed it because I wanted my 625 back. What I didn't know was that if you keep a secured card and you utilize it in good standing, normally after 6 months to about 12 months, they'll give you back your initial money and they'll give you an unsecured card. And so if you have a secured card, I would definitely, well, you can Google and research, like, is this one that transforms into an unsecured card? Because everything's on the internet. So yeah, so those are some really good places to start. And it only makes sense, like, if you actually have income to get, a credit card. If you're someone that's living off of other things, then it would be good to start somewhere, maybe get a secured card, but don't look to go apply and get a whole bunch of new credit and a whole bunch of new stuff when you don't have the income to support whatever you're looking to do, because it's an extension of your debit account. You should only spend what you can afford to pay off every month. But with that being said, we'll open the floor for questions. And I think I saw one in the chat, and I'm going to pop this down.
So I see one in the chat that says, "What's the best way to manage your finances while you're a student?" And then I have a question also.
Okay, great. So best way to manage your finances, I think, is just do it, depending on what your situation is, because there are a lot of people that are students that are in such different financial situations. Whether you use an app like a Mint or like a Every Dollar, or you do like an Excel budget, I think one of the great things to plan for is not just what you plan on doing with money right now, but really budgeting when you're thinking about the future. If you're thinking about, creating a net worth, what is it that you need to do? What habits do you need to instill into your spending now, so that as you continue growing while you're in school and like your income continues growing, like what habits do you have that are just regularly there? Because say, there's students that make $10 an hour, there's students that make $50 an hour. So all those people utilize their money completely differently, but it's about making a plan that makes sense for the financial future that you want. But if you have questions or anything, I am always happy to talk and help you out however I can.
Yes, we actually have another question. It said someone told them that you can pay off your student loan in increments on your credit card and then pay off the card at the end of the month to help boost their credit score. Is that something that you would advise?
I wouldn't I wouldn't necessarily advise it. So if you're going to all right, if you are going to pay off, your student loans and make your payments like on your cards, if you're paying off the card in full every month, uh sure, that's one way you can get points, I suppose. I don't necessarily I just don't want people to get, caught up in the trap of like, all right, well, I'll make an extra payment, then I don't pay off my card in full. If they're not someone that pays off their cards completely in full every month, then I definitely wouldn't do it, because then you can get into a dangerous game of like, I'm just going to charge more to my card, and your credit card interest is pretty much guaranteed to be higher than whatever interest you have on your student loans.
So something you said earlier prompted a question that I wrote down.
Mhm.
You mentioned, of course, yes, you want to keep your credit below 30%, and you followed that comment up with preferably at zero. So the question is maintaining zero balance on credit, is that wise, or should there be some activity? Like, can you still build credit if you're maintaining zero balances on your cards?
Yeah, your credit still builds, and even if you still have the activity, the point of it is it being zeroed out when the statement balance comes. So even though you charge however much you charge, you just pay it off in full before the statement balance comes, so you don't have to pay interest. And so with that, it still shows that you use the card. It still shows that you made a payment. It just doesn't post a balance that you get charged interest off of, which is definitely not what you want. But when you get to like certain cards, like charge cards, you don't pay interest because you pay it off in full every month anyways.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Uh,
Okay, we have a few more. I'm sorry, Philip.
okay, good. Bring them on. Bring them on.
From Victoria, she asks, can your application for a secured card be rejected?
Sure can. Anything can be rejected, but for the most part, if it's a bank that you actually like bank with, the only reason they should really be rejecting if you just had a whole bunch of negative stuff on your credit report. But for the most part, they feel pretty secure. That's why it's a secured card. It doesn't matter necessarily what you do with it, because not only have they collected the full credit amount up front, they've also already collected interest from the jump. So in a lot of cases, they're pretty okay. If you have no credit at all, no experience, but you don't have anything negative, you shouldn't have anything to worry about as far as getting a secured credit card. But if you have like evictions and other stuff like that, phone bills and stuff that defaulted and went into collections, then you might want to take care of some of that stuff first. But if not, then you should be completely fine to go ahead and do it. Perfect.
Okay, two more questions so far. Should you make specific purchases on a credit card? And well, I'll allow you to answer that question first, but the next question is, does it matter the kind of purchases that you make on said card?
So depending on what kind of card you have, some of them have specific cashback categories or certain like multipliers. So I know like for certain Amex cards that I have, I get like multipliers for booking hotels and like flights through them, like 5 times points. And I have a Discover card that's like, I think it's like 5% for gas and like 3% back on groceries. And so just depending on what the card is, okay. um, And so, just depending on what kind of card that you have, all of them can have different cashback categories. But if not, at base, you can be able to get cashback for all of your daily spend. So, if all your daily spend is normally 1 point, and then with certain categories like gas or like with restaurants, they'll give you like an extra 3 or 5. That's when you would use specific cards for that. But outside of that, just any regular basic purchases you make, it doesn't necessarily matter. You just want to use whatever card gives you the best utility as far as cashback rewards or, Sky Miles or Hilton points, Amex points, etc. Cool. Let's see. I think there was another one in here. Does it matter?
Am-
Yes.
Yes.
Amazon points,
Oh, I'm
Oh.
sorry.
talking for a friend. That's coming very handy during quarantine.
For sure. I've gotten a lot of free books off of Amazon points.
Okay, our next question is, would you continue to use the Discover it card after you begin making a steady income with the well-paying job?
It really just depends on the points. So even with the Discover It student card, it's a regular card as well. And I think right now I can actually look on my phone on my Discover app and see what kind of like multipliers they have. Because I think they normally do like a 5 like for certain categories. And so yeah, so cashback card. It just depends on what you're looking for. Are you more so into getting cashback or Sky Miles, Amex points that you can transfer to a whole bunch of other different programs, etc. Like all that stuff is just dependent on you. So yeah, so they do have a cashback bonus right now, and they're doing one on grocery stores, Walgreens, and CVS. Oh, they do it every 3 months. So right now they're doing restaurants and PayPal. You get an extra 5% for anything that you spend on there, and I've gotten $21 in my 5% rewards this past quarter. And then next month they're doing Amazon.com, Walmart, and Target for I guess their 5% for that month. So yeah, so just depending on what they actually have, and it can become a little daunting to keep up with all the different rewards points you have, and so that's normally why I just stick with my Amex cards because I know that I want to fly some more and go to hotels and stuff, so that works out. Well, perfect.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any last questions? Give them a moment.
There was a follow-up that said, does it matter any kind of the types of purchases that you make? Do the types of purchases that you make matter?
Not really. So long as you're in a way of, paying off whatever you charge at the end of the month, like honestly, no one cares what you spend your money on. As long as it's, if it's something they think is sketch, they'll definitely call you to confirm it's you spending it. But as soon as you confirm it, they'll let it, go on. And to get certain rewards or to get to like next tier, so let's say something like, oh, cool, like I heard about like a black card, a Centurion card. Like, how do you get those? Or like the JP Palladium card, which are like two of the crazier credit cards. So the JP Palladium card, you actually have to have like 10 million in assets managed by JP Morgan before you can get that one. It's like a $3 million credit limit for that card. And then so for the Amex Centurion card, which is otherwise known as the infamous black card, your key to getting that is actually a platinum card. And so once you have a platinum card, once you hold it for a year and you make on the personal side, I believe it's 250,000 to 350,000 in purchases within 1 year. Or if you have the business version, which I do too, you have to do 350 to 500,000 in a year. And then they used to do invitations only to get the black card, but now you can actually go to centurion.com and just type in your information for a card, and if your stuff works out, they'll send you an invite for it. So yeah, that's the only time that spending really matters. If you're trying to get crazier credit cards, or if you're even looking to get a credit card limit increase, normally it has to make sense that your spend would need, a bigger credit limit.
Okay. We have a few more for you.
Okay.
So the first one, well, I think you actually already kind of answered it. They said, do you know some of the perks that come with the Discover student card? You kind of already answered that now.
Yeah, so they have different cashback rewards and different stuff. Yeah, right now I think they're only doing 5% for that. But here I think it's a very, very starting card more than anything else, and it also just like has its utility because you can keep it even after you finish going to school. It's still a good credit card to have because it's Discover. Like Discover's used a lot of places, even though Amex and Discover, I have realized if I've traveled around some that some places do not accept them. So Visa and MasterCard are actually like the best, but there you go. You can actually click on that and look at it. If it makes sense and you make the income and it's a good place to start and you do not plan on spending anything more than you pay off in full every month, you have my blessing to go ahead and
Okay, our next question is, how should you report income on a credit card application? According to an amendment on the Card Act, borrowers over 21 can list any income to which they have reasonable expectation of access. What does this mean?
So A lot of life is gray areas, but and I can definitely I'll just be transparent. When I started applying for credit cards when this was like my freshman year of college, I definitely lied and said I was making like 60,000. I make a lot more than that now, but when I was starting, I thought that they actually didn't check anything. But that's not a the way that you should do it. But they're counting it basically like as household income. So if you stay at home and you have access to your parents' income and stuff, sometimes people lump all those things together. But then you just have to think about like what makes the most amount of sense for you as an individual. Because yeah, if you make $20,000 a year or $15,000 a year, that's perfectly fine. You're exactly where you should be, and you should get a credit card limit to reflect that. Because then, if you start claiming, you have access to all the income in the house, and say both your parents are physicians, you're making 700K, because they're surgeons, neurosurgeons, or something, and then they give you a credit limit of like I don't know, $30,000, $40,000. What are you going to do with it? And so then you have to think about utility wise, like how much do you really need that money and why do you really need that? But yeah, you should definitely just, they're not going to check it, but you should just be honest with what you're doing. But that was definitely something that I learned along my journey. But yeah.
Okay. I apologize. Our next question. I'm so sorry, Phillip. You are a wonderful speaker, so that's why people have so much to ask you. Um, how many years did it take you to build up over $200,000 in credit?
4 years. Started my freshman year of college, a little bit into it, and so it's maybe it's been about almost 5 years now. Uh, yeah, but the bulk of that actually came in the past 2 years because that's when my income really started to pick up from like business and other stuff. So it made sense for me to get cards that had 20K limits, 30K limits, 40K limits, etc.
Awesome. Now your last question, I promise, I promise. What is the maximum amount of cards that you would suggest someone having?
Depends on the individual, depends on what you do, depends on your income, depends on your discipline. I don't think there's necessarily a strict guideline because there are people that I know millionaires that only believe in having no credit cards. Some of them that have 50 credit cards. Like everyone is so drastically different just depending on you as an individual. But a lot of it comes with like just having discipline and understanding what your intent behind having that many cards is and what you actually do. Personally, like I just end up the same way we were talking about like being authorized users. I just sell some of my credit lines because they're in good standing. They have high limits, and then I don't actually need to utilize them, so they always stay zeroed out, and I get paid pretty good just to let people ride along on my credit lines for 6 months, a year, and then take them off and then rinse and repeat. So I just turn it into another income stream, personally, rather than like I got this and I'm gonna go charge, all this different stuff. I maybe have two cards that I actually like utilize. But yeah, just what makes sense for you. I don't think you should if you're gonna open up cards, maybe two or three is like the most they'll probably even let you do at a time, just depending on your income and everything else. Because the same way we were talking about 524 rule, certain places like American Express follow like 212 or 224 as well. So American Express super lenient, Chase the most stringent and probably like one of the more difficult ones. So if you're gonna open up two cards, I'd say open up the Chase card first, and then open up, the American Express or like a Discover or something, because Chase is definitely way harder to get into their good graces.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much, Phillip, for joining us and for doing this workshop with us today. We always enjoy you. You are such a pleasure. And I'm sure Miss Bracy has something she would like to say, so I'm going to hand it off to her.
Of
Okay.
course. Thank you, Philip. We appreciate you. You are one of the tried and true staple backbones of our ongoing workshops. And we appreciate you transitioning to the virtual platform, which, of course, we've always offered, but it just seems that it's been picking up now. So thank you so much. We will be in touch for spring semester. Um, so thank you, everyone. If you do end up having questions following this presentation, feel free to reach out to myself or Pray. We will try to get those questions answered for you as quickly as possible. I hope this was incredibly helpful. Again, we know that there is a direct relationship between personal and business credit, so we wanted to make sure that you could build a solid foundation first. Last thing before we go, want a couple of reminders. Mask up, make sure everybody's masking up. One of the first things Phillip talked about before he began his presentation was hoping that we can all get back together in the spring, and the only way we could do that is if we work together on that. Number two, I hope everyone is registered to vote. We will not tell you who to vote for, but it is important that you exercise that right as a U.S. citizen. Please register to vote. If anyone has trouble with that, let me know. We can try to figure that out. Last but not least, today it happens to be Georgia State Day. I have my Georgia State alum shirt on. So if you have the opportunity, please consider giving to Georgia State. I'm sure it's all over social media right now. We will be posting on social as well. So just pay it forward. I guess that's the message. Pay it forward. Vote, mask up, pay it forward.
And
That's
join
my
Launch.
and absolutely join Launch. Yes, our final day of the membership campaign is on Friday. So thank you guys so much. If anyone has any questions, just feel free to reach out to us. I'm going to go ahead and put my pray. Will you type your email while I type mine, and then we will let everyone go. Good. Mine is pretty easy. I don't have any numbers. ebracy@gsu.edu. Pray should be putting hers in now. Thank you guys so much. I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Take care.